Well, welcome into the Storycraft Cafe. We are live today. I am your host, Hank Garner. Today, I am really excited to be joined by two of my favorite writers on the planet.
Oh, you're so sweet.
One of which is with me right now, Lynn Constantine, and her sister Valerie Constantine is having a few technical issues. So we said we're going to go ahead and go live, and hopefully Valerie will be able to get that worked out and join us. But like I said, the Constantine sisters, who write collectively as Liv Constantine, have written some of my all-time favorite books, beginning with The Last Mrs. Parrish, and now we're here today to talk about a book that releases this coming Tuesday, or if you're listening to the audio podcast, you may be listening on book release day. But if you're in YouTube land, we've got a couple of days. Timelines and time zones are my kryptonite sometimes. But whenever you're listening to this, you can either pre-order the next Mrs. Parrish, or go grab it at your local bookstore if it's on book release day. I didn't think that book, that first book, The Last Mrs. Parrish, I didn't think you could do anything else with that story. I felt like there was such a mic drop at the end of that book, and you guys just walked off like, boom, top that. Well, you did it. You figured out a way to add another chapter to that story, a story that I didn't think could be added to, and you did it. And not only did you continue that story, but you added new characters to it, which I loved, and I loved the depth and complexity that you added to the story.
Thank you.
What a fun ride. So welcome, Lynn, and
Thank you.
virtually welcome, Valerie. We hope that you're able to join us in a few minutes.
Yes. Thank you so much.
You're absolutely welcome. So what's been going on, Lynn? That's when we talked last summer, I guess the senator's wife was out, and another great thrilling mystery. When did you guys decide to pick up the Parrish thread again? Like what? I've been really curious. Like what made you want to revisit this world and those characters?
Sure. We're often asked at book events, even after The Last Mrs. Parrish came out, if we were going to write a sequel to it. And it was not something that we ever planned. As you said, we kind of felt like, we tied everything up and the story was over. But then we wrote the prequel to it, which is called The First Shot. It's a novella, and it came out,
Yes.
it was an Audible original, and then we ended up also offering it in print a year later. And that is where one of the new character that you mentioned, Daisy Ann Briscoe, she comes in, and she only was in the very last chapter of The First Shot, but she was very powerful. She sort of came fully formed on the
Yes.
page. And she and Amber are at odds, and she has a huge vendetta against Amber that goes unsolved in that prequel. And so that got us thinking about what if we continued everyone's story and we brought Daisy Ann back in, and then we had to say, all right, well, what's Daphne doing and how does she tie into the story? And we started to get really excited thinking about because their characters, they kind of were always on our mind, in the back of our mind, right? They
Yeah.
never really forgot them, and it's love all of our books, but it's really been a fan favorite, and it's the book that has probably stayed with us the most out of all of our books. So once we began to think about it and talk about it, we realized that there was more to tell, and so we did, because the last thing we wanted to do was to write something that would disappoint fans of the first book, and we felt like it was a really kind of a high bar. It was a bit
Yeah.
nerve-wracking, actually, because we really, which may be part of the reason that we never thought about going back to it, but we've been very gratified and relieved at early reviews where people are saying that they love it as much, if not more, as the first book.
Well, as I began reading the next Mrs. Parrish, and I'm showing everyone my Kindle because I have a lovely hardback release version, but my daughter, who's the biggest Liv Constantine fan in the world, steals my books as soon as they come in,
Okay, I've got
and
mine. So Look at that pink
So
dress. Yes.
I'm reading it. She read it first because she stole my copy.
Oh my God.
But I see Valerie trying to connect here. Hopefully, we'll be able to add her. There she is. There's Valerie. Hi,
Valerie.
Valerie.
She might not have great connectivity because she's on data, so it might not work. We might just have
Well,
to look at the picture.
hi, Valerie. So I began reading the next Mrs. Parrish, and I was talking with my daughter, and I said I really like
Move
this new
closer to your
character
router.
of
I think if I
Daisy
go put it in
Ann.
the bedroom, it was.
Val, why don't you drop? Maybe better take her out of the room, and I'll
Yeah,
text her. There you
we'll
go.
bring her back on in a second.
Yeah.
I was talking to my daughter, Chloe, and I said I really like this new character of Daisy Ann that they've brought in, and and she said, "Yeah, I really loved her when they brought her into the end of the prequel." And I don't know how it happened, but I completely missed the first shot when it came out for
Oh,
whatever reason. I don't know. I got tied up in other things that just missed it when it came out, and so I went on my Kindle, and sure enough, I grabbed it and I started reading it, and then we took this picture with my grandson, Chloe's
I
son,
love.
with the
Oh,
first shot as he stole my Kindle. So I had to email that to you guys, and I thought you'd get a
that was
kick
so
out of that.
cute. That was
Yeah.
adorable. Yeah.
So we raised the fans up early in this family. But anyway, so I read that and I was like, oh my gosh, this adds so much more texture and depth to the characters. Reading the prequel, so where did that come from? What possessed you guys to write that prequel that then birthed the sequel?
We had been approached by Audible a while back asking us, they were doing a lot of Audible originals at the time. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if that's still happening. And so initially we were going to write the backstory of, if you remember in the last Mrs. Parrish, how Amber's running from the law. We were going to kind of explore that. But our editor said, well, I think it would be, why don't you come up with a completely new story that has, that about Amber, but that kind of shows like and her first shot at like trying to land somebody rich. And so we just started talking and thinking about it, and that's when we came up with the idea of her going to Colorado and and sort of targeting this other man, and then having it not work out, and then it sets her up at the end of the prequel to go to Bishop's Harbor. So like at the end of it, she's looking through and she sees Jackson, and she's like, okay, I'm going to set my sights on him. So it was just so that it would be something completely fresh and something new, and that's how that was developed.
Interesting. So then you realized that these characters had more life to them. There was more mystery to be told.
Yes, definitely.
I,
Yeah.
I love it. Hi, Valerie. Can you hear us this time?
I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh, and we lost Valerie again. Boy, she's struggling with it today, isn't she?
I think
Oh,
it should represent for both of us probably this year. Yeah.
so in the next Mrs. Parrish, we have Amber and Jackson, two characters that we love to hate. If there ever were two characters that just have no redeeming qualities, Amber and Jackson, I think, are them. And then Daphne, of course, and then this new character of Daisy Ann. How did you? When you're thinking about characters like Amber and Jackson, and you think in the last book, okay, I have shown them to be both despicable people in their own ways. How do you up that and continue? Because I know you and Valerie, and y'all are the sweetest people ever, and you write these people that are just horrible, horrible people. On one hand, that has to be a lot of fun to get
It is.
to explore the side, of humanity that you don't live out. But then how do you get in touch with those feelings and emotions and character traits that I hope are very foreign from the way you feel about the world.
Never know, Hank, what goes on. Well, I mean, I think with Amber, I mean, I do think she has a couple redeeming qualities. Actually, she's very smart and she's very funny, and she is a hard worker. So she does her research. She doesn't.
Well, that she does.
Out, right. I mean,
Yeah.
not that I would aspire to be anything like her, in her way. But I think the key, at least for us, is to try as best we can to really get into the mindset of that character, to understand the motivation and what is driving them. And so for Amber, she really believes she's entitled to a better life, and that she has her very own strange moral code, right? So
right.
She can justify whatever she does. So it's really kind of staying within that and having those internal thoughts. And she's fun to write because she is funny. I mean, I would hate to have her in my life, but
Right.
funny and all of that. And then with Jackson, again, he's a very flawed character, but he also believes, right, that he is, what he's doing is because he wants, to be with, I don't want to give too much away, but because of his beliefs about family and what he
Right.
deserves. And it's not like he's thinking, oh, I can't wait to be horrible to, he doesn't think he is, even though how he could not realize that he is, I don't, is
Right.
hard to understand. But again, in his mind, his motive, he's motivated by what he wants to own, what he wants to accomplish. And he thinks that he is doing the thing to, like, make his children turn out right or be back with them. So I think it's really understanding the motivation, the background, the trauma, and the flaws in those characters so that they come off in an authentic way.
That's I've heard it said before, and it could be cliche, I guess, if you think about it too much. But one piece of advice is when you're writing antagonist or people that are not don't seem to be redeeming characters, is that every character is the hero of their own story. And so is it really getting into the mind of that character and figuring out what their motivation is that then
Absolutely
helps you to then kind of get on their side, if you will, as the writer?
Yes. I mean, not I don't know about getting, but on their side, but just writing them in a genuine way and understanding, again, that they're not waking up in the morning saying, oh, I'm going to hurt, do this to that. But they're saying, I'm going to get what I want. Right. Amber is saying, okay, this is what I deserve. This is what I want. This is what I have to do to get it. And she's not really concerned with how that affects anyone else. And with Jackson, he somehow is able to convince himself that even that the ends justify the means. That's really more his MO, where he's like, okay, well, I may have to be harsh and I may have to do this, but it's only because I'm trying to do what I think is best for everyone. So even though,
and he even has some of those conversations in the book where he lays it out like that, like, and I had to do it this way, even though you're reading and you're going, what a despicable thing, but to him it's just perfectly natural.
Yeah. And Daphne's like, seriously, dude, you really think that? But she's the only one that's kind of like hopefully like most of our readers are, and not wanting that kind of stuff to happen. But it makes for a lot of drama and a lot of fun. I mean, it's interesting. I didn't think about it with the first book, but I've had other people now say, and this is going to definitely, date me, but that it reminds them of Dynasty. Remember? Which I love that show, so, and I guess it's a little bit the same thing. I mean, not that Amber's Alexis, but like those characters, they just were very larger than life, and they just did what they wanted to do because they're just advancing their own agendas.
The Carringtons, was that the family name?
Carrington, and Crystal. Yes.
Yeah, I just told my age as well. You and Valerie write together, and we have talked about this several times before, and the way that that you structure your co-writing together. The new book is written in 4 different perspectives, I believe,
Yes.
and 3 of them are third person narrator. But when you get to Daphne, it's first person narrator. Um, and I thought that was interesting, the way that you kind of flipped heads. But then when you land on Daphne, it's it's almost like you're living all of this through her. What was the what was the motivation to tell the story in that way and to have Daphne be that central character where the anchors drop, so to speak?
Right. Well, I mean, Daphne is definitely the protagonist, although so is Daisy Ann to
Right.
a degree. But in the first book, that is how we had it. We had Amber with the third person narrative and Daphne in the first person, and it just we just decided to go with the same thing just to keep it kind of consistent. And it's an interesting thing with point of view, because we've often in different books we'll start with one point of view and it just isn't quite working, and so then we'll try
Mhm.
it in another point of view, and that it does seem to work. So for again, Daphne, she we a lot of what she's going through is emotion, right, and
Mhm.
fear, and a lot of thoughts and trepidation about having to come back and what she's going to deal with. And so we felt like a first person narrative would really let you into her thoughts and her feelings much better than the third person narrative. And also I think it's tricky if you have too many first. If you can have multiple third person,
Right.
you have multiple first person, it can be confusing even though you have the person's name at the top. So I think
Right.
for clarity's sake as well. And then this is the first, of course, this is the first time you get a Jackson point of view. It's only one chapter, but we felt that was necessary in order to convey what we needed to convey. So that was really kind of fun to write, because we've had people ask too in the past, like, well, how come we don't hear from Jackson? And we didn't feel like we wanted to give him a voice in the last book, but he needed one in this one.
Oh, but when you give him a voice in this book, mm, wow, it's yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about it. Just wow. And a little insider information: if you get the audiobook, because I got the audiobook from your publisher last week, and it's kind of skipped through and listen. I'd already read the book, but I was just kind of getting a feel for how the audio. When you get to Jackson's chapter, it's narrated by Scott Brick.
I met him.
And did you really?
Yeah.
That's
What were you
oh.
going to say about Scott? I'm sorry, I didn't mean
I was just gonna say that when you land on that and you hear a completely different narrator, and because a lot of times, and there are great narrators, male and female, who can, they're great voice actors, and they take on this other character and they morph into it, and you kind of forget that this is a female narrator, but she's narrating this male point of view chapter.
Right.
And just after a couple of sentences, you just kind of sink into it and forget. But when it flips over and you hear Scott Brick come on, you're like, oh, what is going on? That was a beautiful touch.
Yeah, I met him at Thriller Fest, and his wife Suzanne, who plays Amber. So it's perfect. So Suzanne Elise Freeman and Scott Brick are married in real life, and then they're the married narrators in the book. So we did a lot of fun pictures at Thriller Fest and put them on Instagram. They were both wonderful. I
Oh,
loved them. So yeah, it was
so
really fun.
fun.
Yeah.
So fun.
I still haven't heard the audio. I should ask for.
Oh, it's
I ordered it.
incredible.
Oh,
It's incredible.
yeah, I think I'll listen to it on Pub Day, because it'll come right into my
Yeah.
yeah.
Speaking of that, is it weird to listen to your own audiobook?
Yes, and yes and no. So, and again, of all of our books, the one that I enjoy listening to the most has been The Last Mrs. Parrish, because Amber is so outrageous and Jackson is so
Yes.
outrageous. Like, just hearing it takes it to a completely new level.
Right.
Yes, but it's fun to listen to, but just like anything. I mean, you always could go back and think to yourself, oh, I could have, why did I use that word? I mean, the self-criticism is a real thing.
Yeah. Anytime that I'm talking to someone and telling them that I'm going to do a show with a co-writing duo, one question that I always get is who writes which point of view and who writes the other point of views. Do you and Valerie take different characters and write them, or do you both write each one of them, collectively? Like, how do you split up those tasks?
Yeah, no, we write everything. We write every character, each of us. I mean, we split it up by scenes because it would be one thing if we were writing a book, say, that took place in 2 different time frames, right? And then you could write you could write individually. But because our characters all interact with each other, I have to be able to write every character, and so does Valerie, authentically, because they're going to appear, even if I said, okay, I'll write whatever Daisy Ann and you write Amber, and we'll both write Daphne, but they're all going to be interacting together. So we talk every morning and we decide who's going to write what scene, and then we go off separately and write on our own. Then we email each other, we edit each other's work. And oftentimes too, I'll send Valerie half a chapter and say, do you feel like finishing this? I'm kind of stuck, or, it's just not, just really not feeling it, or vice versa. So by the time the book has been edited by us several times and then gone through editorial with our editor, it is not uncommon for one sentence to have written half by Valerie and half by me.
Right.
So it's really, which is helpful, I think, too, so that you don't hear so it seems as though it was written by one author, which is the hope.
Yeah. Well, and I would think that adds a layer of, well, I don't know, a layer of I don't know, but if you're writing a book by yourself, and you may get through that entire first draft, and your eyes are the only ones that have ever seen this manuscript, and then you maybe walk away from it for a couple of weeks if you're that patient, if you've got that much self-control, and then come back to it, and then try to put on your editor hat and get a fresh look at it, and then figure out what needs to be changed or tidied up or whatever. But when you're working with a co-author like that, you're constantly editing each other's work as you go. So when you get finished with that first draft, I would think that has to be a pretty clean first draft, as far as like story structure wise. Like, I would think that you had already kind of wrestled out some of those things that need to be addressed after the first draft. Is that true?
I think it depends. In this case, I think yes, but because this book, we don't normally plot everything out. In this book, we had pretty much we had like a 6 or 7 page summary outline of what was going to happen. And of course, there was a lot of room to navigate within that. So we had nailed that story structure with our editor and with our agent before we even started writing, which, like I said, is not normally the case. But like Senator's Wife, for instance, that took us 2 years. Normally we write a book a year, and we completely reconstructed that after the first couple drafts and tore it apart. And we even changed one of the points of, a point of view character. I think we changed some point of views themselves. So it just depends on the book. But this time, I think so. I mean, I feel like we had a solid first draft. I mean, we still, pardon me, we still go through it, each separately after it's finished, and we'll make notes and say, okay, we might need another chapter about this, or we may need a little more detail here, or maybe there's too much here, and we'll take care of all of that, and then we'll do a second draft. And then it's not until the third or fourth then we'll actually start to look at language and grammar and that sort of thing. And then of course our editor was fabulous, and she had more refinements that made it better. So
yeah. After 6 books, do you guys feel like that does it get easier when you begin a new project? The blank page is kind of the everyone has to approach the blank page when a new book starts. It kind of levels the playing field for everyone. Does it get easier after 6 books?
No, I don't. In some ways, I feel almost that it gets harder because you always want to do better, right? I mean, the writing to improve, A, and B, you can't use any of the plots and subplots that you've used before. So it's like, okay,
right.
what am I going to do? And because people are always looking, because we've sort of become known for the twist, that becomes more difficult, because we know people are really looking, okay, if they say this. So it's, we kind of go through this dance of, all right, well, if we do this, people are going to think this, but then we do that. So yeah, it's just I mean, it's not the worst was that second book, that sophomore book, that was horrible, that pressure. So it's not like that, thankfully, but it's still difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you have any rituals that you guys do before you start a new book? Do you read any certain things? Are there any things that you guys do to kind of psych yourself up to tackle a new project?
No, not really. I mean, we just start to talk, and it was good with this one, like I said, because writing a sequel, we didn't have to recreate the whole, except for the Dallas piece.
True.
That was the new story world. But no, it's typically just batting back and forth ideas until we land on something that we both feel excited about, that we want to devote the time to.
Do you guys ever have disagreements about where a story should go? And if so, how do you resolve who gets their way?
Yes, we do. Typically, those that it's more in the beginning phases, when we're
Yeah.
figuring out where to go. I mean, and what we'll do is we'll just talk it through and really say what makes the most sense for the story. There have been times we would just have to like put it aside for a day or two, both go our separate ways,
Mhm.
think about it, and then you make your case and say, okay, well, I hear you, and but this is why I think it should be, X, Y, and Z. And then usually, I mean, we both are always in service of the book. So I think there's only been maybe one or two times where we couldn't agree. And in that case, we took it to the editor and said, here's two points of view. We're not going to say which is which. And then we let the editor decide. But usually whoever makes the stronger case is the one who wins, so to speak. Yeah.
I love it. The settings of Bishop's Harbor, which we return to in this book, uh, and then also Texas, and Colorado are three kind of main settings for this book. And um, not only do we have different points of view, but we have different settings where the book is taking place, sometimes simultaneously, um, or it appears to be. How did by adding the other settings to the book, how did that affect how the story unfolds? Did that give you some freedom to kind of change the way that you approach a scene? Maybe by setting it in a different place with different characters kind of supporting. Does that give you freedom to kind of stretch your creative wings a little bit?
Yeah, I think, the one thing that was so distinctive about the last Mrs. Parrish was the setting, and, the Bishop's Harbor and this world of wealth. And so we didn't want to be redundant with the book. Now, certainly that's
Mhm.
still here in the chapters that Daphne's in, but it's really not focused on that aspect of Bishop's Harbor, is not as much focused on in her chapters. So where you get the glamour and the wealth is in the Texas and the Dallas society, which was something new and really fun to dive into and learn. So it's a different take, because again, we wanted to bring something fresh. We knew that a sequel was going to have that same wow, sort of, rich,
Mhm.
fun, extravagant, luxurious factor. But we didn't want to redo the same thing with Bishop's Harbor. So yeah, I mean, there's some parties and stuff that are still a little bit, over the top. But really, you get to look into the Dallas society, and then the Colorado, which is fun. That harkens back a bit to the prequel, because of course
Mhm.
that's where the whole thing originated with Daisy Ann and Amber. And so that just brings another an element and more outdoorsy, and just a different, fresh scene to it. So it was a lot of fun, really kind of going back and forth between all of those settings, as opposed to sticking to just Bishop's Harbor, Connecticut.
Right. What does your pre-writing look like? I know that you said you guys don't normally outline out a whole lot, but you did do, some story synopsis, at least in the beginning. I'm assuming there's some research that goes into it,
Yes.
digging stuff up about Dallas society, and then, like, what is your pre-writing when you're getting ready for a new project? What does that look like?
So in this case, yes, Valerie had a good friend from Dallas who she interviewed and spoke with. We subscribed to the Dallas magazine. We read books about Dallas. Colorado was easier because Valerie's son lives there, and
Okay.
and I've been there as well, and Valerie's been there plenty of times, so that was an easy part. And then we also do character sketches. I will look too online to kind of have pictures of what I think the characters look like, all of them, the not just the
Mhm.
main characters, but like Birdie, all the husbands, the secondary characters. And I'll send them to Valerie and be like, okay, what do you think of this? And then we have sheets on each character with their background and pet peeves and habits and quirks and lots of things that don't really ever even make it into the book, but that help us know these characters better.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much, and then like I said, a broad outline so that we know where we're going, like a one sentence outline, and that continues to evolve as the book is writing. So I will then, it'll start one way, and then as we're writing and chapters are moving around, we'll add to that just as a roadmap so that we know where
Mhm.
we're going. Yeah.
Gotcha. The thriller genre, just as a big umbrella, is really having a moment right now. And if you think back to some of the big things that have happened in recent memory in the thriller genre, you have to think of Gillian Flynn and the unreliable narrator that we all loved in Gone Girl, and how that affected just about everything that came after that for the next couple of years. Everybody was including an unreliable narrator, and how can you trick the reader more than you did? And you alluded to something a little bit like that a minute ago when you said that you guys are really known for your twist. But then once you've played a twist on the readers, how do you kind of up the ante every time because they come to expect it?
Yes.
And you also said that a week or two ago you went to Thriller Fest. What do you see happening in the thriller space right now? Do you uh, can you identify any trends that are coming up, and how do you and Valerie feel like you fit
Right.
into the space right now?
I mean, I don't know if this is still a trend. It seems like for a while the locked room mysteries really were
Yeah,
hot, right? That there were like
right.
a lot of those, and even shows coming out with that. But I think people are branching out. I think you see more hybrid stories too now, like a little bit more romance with thriller or supernatural, or so I'm not really sure. You know, I still think domestic thrillers are very popular,
Right.
and and I actually think they always have been. I think, right, you go back to Rebecca. If
Sure.
Rebecca were published today, it would be under domestic suspense. It would be, right. It would be a
Right.
psychological thriller. It wouldn't just be. I mean,
Yes.
as well as general fiction. All of those stories, because they're interesting and people can relate to the everyday. So I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I wish I knew what the next big trend twisty thing. I think we've stayed with this one for quite a while. Um, but as they say, you can't chase trends anyway, because if you did, by the time your book came out, it wouldn't matter.
Right.
So I don't know. That's the best answer. I don't know. If you find out, let me know.
Well, you know, for 10 years we've been trying to figure out what the trends are. So,
Yeah.
um, one of the things that you guys are known for are your character voices, and um, you have these larger than life characters, and they really jump off the page, especially in dialogue, and how you instantly, well, after you've read a couple of chapters of one of your books, you have this picture of these characters and they really become alive. um how much work does it take to get that character to be in that space? Do these characters kind of come fully formed to you, or do they evolve through the writing and through the editing where they keep being refined and refined, or do they just kind of come out of your brain, these larger than life characters?
Yeah. So Amber sort of came, right.
Right.
And Daphne too, and Daisy. In this case, they all did. But I will say, in The Senator's Wife, Sloane took a long time, and she was, again, that could also be another reason why it took us so long, because she was very quiet in the beginning, and because she was dealing with an illness, there were oftentimes you couldn't really see the true essence of her personality and her resilience, and so that's one of the reasons we needed to rework that storyline, where it starts off when she's not in a flare because she has lupus, so she's feeling good and she's able to do things, so the reader could connect with her, and so that we could as well. But again, in that book, like Rosemary, her former mother-in-law, she really just came alive right from the beginning, and she was one of my favorite characters. So I think it depends. Like I said, every book is different, but we do really try to put the time in before we begin writing to like I said, to know the character, to know again what happened to them in childhood, or what affected them, or what are their fears. I mean, and of course you can't know everything, and they surprise you sometimes, and they change, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, guess what, this happened, I didn't know, but and we allow that to happen. So I'm glad to hear, and thank you. I mean, I hope that they're distinct, because I do think it's, like I love Desperate Housewives, say, for instance, and you think of those four women who are so different, right? I mean, immediately, and just from a sentence, even if you didn't hear the voice, you would know who was Bree, who was, I'm forgetting all their names, Susan, all of that. And so I think we all aspire to that, and hopefully hit the nail on the head more often than we miss it.
The next Mrs. Parrish, is it where all is it publishing next week? I know it's publishing in the States next Tuesday.
And also, Quercus is publishing it in the UK, and that's also next Tuesday. Yes. So, and I think right now, at this point, I don't know. I don't have a foreign update at this point. Yeah.
You guys, your other books have been published all over the world. Is that how bizarre is that to see your book come in and it's translated into another language, and the idea of someone across the world, digging into your stories? That how has your foreign reception been, and do you ever think it, like when you're crafting a new story, do you ever think about, someone in Europe that doesn't even speak the same language as you is going to be having as much fun with the story as you are?
No, I mean, it's really it's wonderful. I mean, and exciting, and we love that. And we love to see all of the different covers, because they're all different, and the interpretations. I mean, I wish I could read them in at least some of the other languages, but I can't. So I mean, we love seeing that, and it's very exciting every time we get a new foreign translation. And I mean, I have a bookcase in my kitchen that has all the different ones for Mrs. Parrish, and and we've made posters, and so it's and I like too. Like, I didn't see it. I was just in Greece this summer. I was hoping to see, because there is a Greek, The Last Mrs. Parrish, but I didn't see it anywhere. But I brought it with me, and I gave it to the people at the hotel where we stayed, and so they were excited to have a book in Greek. So that's always very fun.
I love it. I love it. Well, the next Mrs. Parrish, there it is right there. If you can not see the glare on my Kindle screen, releases this coming Tuesday all over. Go visit your local bookstore, grab a copy. We'll put links in the show notes where you can grab it from Amazon if you don't have an amazing local bookstore. Lynn, if folks are just discovering you guys and want to dig into, your amazing back catalog and follow along for news and stuff, what's the best place, kind of the central repository for all things Liv Constantine on the web?
Our website. So that's livconstantine.com, and there's links to all our social media, and and to all our books. And and I believe both The Last Mrs. Parrish and The First Shot are on Kindle Unlimited for those who are members. They can download that. Yeah.
Wonderful. I know for a fact that the first shot is, because I grabbed it while sitting by the pool and read it that afternoon while I was sitting there. But yeah, we'll update in the links and let folks know where they can grab it. Lynn, please give Valerie my love. I hate that she didn't get to
I know.
join us today.
Listen, we love talking to you. You always have the best questions. I know she was disappointed that, I don't know, the whole neighborhood was out. So
It happens.
yeah,
it's life in the 21st century.
exactly.
Congratulations on the new book
so
launch, and we'll be watching for the next bit of news.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Take
Lynn.
care.
Have a